Exposed, the heartwarming moment my son surprised his mother-in-law with a BMW while I got 3. In the heart of a small Midwestern town, where golden fields kissed the sunrise, John stood frozen, clutching a crumpled $3 bill like it was a winning lottery ticket. His son, David, was about to unveil a shiny BMW for Grandma Ruth's birthday, a gesture that ignited joy in the hearts of all. John's heart raced not with the thrill of celebration, but with a chilling stab of inadequacy. Every minute that passed, he felt the burden of striving to provide for his family only to stand on the sidelines as his son lived out the American dream John had grafted with his own 2 hands. How can I give her anything that compares? John whispered to himself, his gaze flickering from the window to the laughter swirling through the house. The family buzzed with excitement, while John, the blue-collar man who rose before dawn for the past 20 years, worried whether he was enough. As David's laughter rang like a chorus of angels, John felt his heart tighten, a tangled mix of pride and pain that knotted in his chest. In a moment, John's thoughts raced. Each cobbled pair of hands in town had a story woven with love, struggle, and small victories. Ruth, who worked tirelessly to raise Lisa, was the rock that held their family together. She stood on the threshold of celebrating her day, a woman who had weathered countless storms, and here David was, eager to show his gratitude with a grand gift, but then, it happened. As Ruth pulled into the driveway, her rusted old car coughed one final time and sputtered to a halt, smoke rising like a disappointing mist. The churning joy shattered into gasps of surprise. John's chest tightened as worry etched itself onto Ruth's face. You could almost see the golden outlines of her 50 years of hard work wane in an instant. Before the concern could settle, the community sprang into action, weaving together like a patchwork quilt. Old Mr. Jenkins brought over some tools, while Miss Clara gathered neighbors to lend a helping hand. In that moment of crisis, John felt his spirit lift, reminding him of what truly mattered: family and love. It was not about the car or the grand plans, it was about the people standing close, battling life together. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As John tightened the last bolt beneath the hood, he hesitated, emotions bubbling just beneath the surface. He turned to catch David's eye. Their shared gaze was a battle of pride and vulnerability, and John's heart raced again. He yearned to pour out his feelings, to confess the weight of his perceived failure against the backdrop of shared sacrifices. The moment stood still, the repair complete, and the old car roared back to life. Laughter erupted, and joy surged through the air. But beneath that joy, there was a quivering tension hanging between father and son. In that moment of triumphant restart, John faced David with stormy emotions swirling inside him. Would he voice his insecurity, or would he let the moment slip away, swallowed up by the glint of a luxurious vehicle? As the family enveloped Ruth in hugs, laughter echoing like music, John stood on the periphery, lost in thought. What did it mean to truly give? To truly be a part of this family? The question lingered, a whisper in his ear, as the world carried on around him. As the roars of laughter faded, John's heart was still racing. The joy surrounding him felt too tangible, almost suffocating. He could see everyone: David, with that wide grin, the one that made him look effortlessly handsome; Ruth, enveloped by love, her eyes crinkling with delight; Lisa, hugging her mother as if she had just given her the world. And there he was, standing a couple of feet away, feeling like a ghost of the celebration. "Hey, Dad! Come join us!" David called out, motioning him over. The excitement in his son's voice was infectious, but John felt heavy. The moment poured itself out like a glass of spilled milk, and no charm could refill it. Taking a deep breath, John stepped forward, forcing a smile. He clapped David on the shoulder, letting his hand linger, hoping to convey some of the vulnerability he felt. You really went all out, huh? Grandma's going to remember this one for years. He lacked enthusiasm, but his son beamed like a proud lion, full of life. Thanks, Dad. I just wanted her to know how much she means to us all, David replied, eyes glistening with sincerity. You know how hard she worked for us. Yeah, John thought. He knew that all too well. He had watched Ruth pour her life into her family while he fought through endless days to keep the bills paid. In his mind, he saw every sacrifice she made, echoed in his own life. The weight of that realization pressed down on him. Amid the cheerful chaos, John turned again to the garage. His gaze fell on the old family pickup, its paint faded, the engine long worn down. He could fix it. He wanted to fix it. But what kind of gift matched what David had done? What could he give Ruth that could show his gratitude and respect? Just then, Ruth approached, her smile still radiant but softening as she noticed John's expression. John, I need to thank you for today. I didn't expect any of this. You've always been so generous, she said, reaching out to pat his arm. His heart melted a little. Generous. He didn't see himself that way, not now. Ruth, it's all David, he stammered. He planned everything. Ruth shook her head gently. But you're a part of that, John. Don't sell yourself short. John swallowed hard. If only she knew how low he felt right now. The words were there, almost on the tip of his tongue, but he held back again. Maybe it was time to speak out. Maybe it was time to show the family what he could give. Suddenly, the tune of an old Leonard Cohen song drifted from inside the house, stirring memories of quieter times. John's mind raced through recollections of simpler gatherings, family dance-offs, and laughter over homemade dinners. There was heart in those moments that was worth more than any grand gift. Could he recreate that? Maybe, he thought. There was a spark of hope glimmering under the weight of doubt. Hey, how about we plan a family dinner this week? John proposed, feeling a flicker of excitement. I could, cook. You all could bring dessert. David's face lit up. That sounds great. Just like old times. Yes. Ruth exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. The spark grew into flames as they all nodded and agreed. John felt lighter, almost as if he had breathed life into the room, but as they all discussed the details, a nagging voice remained in his mind. The past still loomed large. Could he really share his feelings now? Would that family dinner be enough to bridge the gap he felt? The reality of those unspoken thoughts loomed like shadows in his mind as they drifted off into laughter once more. And while hope danced through his heart, doubt still clenched around it tightly. What would it take for him to break free from that fear? As the evening sky dusted the world outside with tender hues of twilight, John understood the true battle was only just beginning. John couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled deep in his chest as they made plans for the dinner. The laughter of his family swirled around him, a beacon of light, yet the shadows of his unspoken thoughts loomed over the warmth, threatening to pull him under. He knew he had to act, but words failed him more often than not. As the night rolled on and the guests began to trickle home, John waved goodbye, hiding his uneasiness with forced smiles. David and Lisa embraced their grandmother, soaking up the lingering joy, while Ruth busied herself with cleaning up the scraps left from the celebration. John grabbed a stack of plates, helping out mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere. He glanced at the old pickup parked in the garage, its faded paint reminders of better days spent together. Was fixing it really what mattered, or was it more about mending the spaces between them? A sting of regret washed over him. How many memories had they missed over the years because he had prioritized work over family? Ruth peeked into the garage, catching his brooding gaze. You all right, John? She asked, concern etching her features. Yeah, just thinking, he replied, forcing a grin that felt more like a mask than a smile. About dinner? She suggested, her eyes shining with excitement. David has great ideas. I can't wait to see what you'll cook. You always have a touch of magic in the kitchen. That thought sparked a flicker of determination in him. Perhaps this dinner could be his chance. If he could put his heart into cooking, maybe he could also let out those feelings bottled up inside. I'm going to make the best pot roast you've ever tasted. Now that's a promise. Ruth laughed lightly as she returned to the living room. There it was again, the tickle of courage and the nagging fear intertwined. He threw a dish into the sink a bit harder than intended, the crash echoing through the stillness of the house. John took a deep breath, letting the frustration fade with the steam wafting from the faucet. As the days passed, anticipation built alongside his anxiety. He planned the menu with detail: pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Each ingredient stirred memories of family dinners filled with laughter, his grandmother's voice entering the background of his conscience, urging him to bring the family closer, to heal. On the day of the dinner, John found himself nervously placing chairs around the table, wiping the hardwood until it gleamed. He cooked with a fierce determination, slicing the vegetables with a precision that spoke of his intention. The savory aroma filled the house, wrapping it in comfort. When the doorbell rang, his heart raced. David burst in, followed by Lisa and Ruth. "It's smelling great in here," David exclaimed, his grin wide. "Is the roast done yet?" "I'm starving," Lisa chimed in, swinging her arms around her brother with a teasing jest. Their presence softened the corners of his heavy heart. As they settled in, the atmosphere shifted, laughter washing over him, temporarily easing his fears. But the moment came as they were gathered around the table. As everyone took a bite of the roast, John felt the walls of silence, those unspoken words, threatening to drown him again. He watched their expressions transform to delight, and in that instant, a wave of clarity rushed through him. This was what he wanted. The connection, the influence of love, the shared courage to be vulnerable. "Listen," John's voice came out stronger than he felt, "I've been thinking. We've missed out on moments, the good heart-to-heart talk. I want to do better. I want us to be a family again." Ruth placed her fork down, her eyes wide with surprise. Silence blanketed the table, knives and forks pausing midair. John's heart beat wildly, emotion stripped bare like the frosting from a wedding cake. "Well, what did you have in mind?" David finally asked, breaking through the tense pause. John took a deep breath, hoping this was the start of something beautiful as uncertainty lingered in the air. Would they embrace his plea? Or would it spiral into complicated apologies? As everyone leaned in with interest, there was a shimmer of hope inside him. But would it be enough to bridge the gaps he felt? The answer hung on a thread, and he held his breath in anticipation. The air felt thick with expectation. John's heart raced as he searched for the right words, hoping to express what had been lodged in his throat for far too long. He could see the questions flickering in their eyes, the curiosity inviting him to open up. Would this night be a turning point? "Well," he began hesitantly, "it's about spending more time together. We've let our lives get too busy. I miss the days when we'd sit around the table and talk. Just be together." David shrugged, glancing at his sister. "Yeah, I guess life gets in the way sometimes." He chuckled lightly. "But you're right. We ought to change that." John felt a weight lift slightly. Perhaps this was how they could start again. "I want us to have regular family dinners. Maybe once a week. Just the four of us," he continued, the passion growing in his voice. "We can share stories, throw in some games, maybe even cook together. It'll take some effort, but it'll be worth it, right?" Ruth nodded, placing her hand over John's. "That sounds beautiful, John. We all need this. I miss those days too." Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears, warmth evident in her smile. Lisa leaned forward, her face lighting up with excitement. "Oh, I'm in. We could even try new recipes each week. It will be like our own little cooking show." Laughter brightened the mood further. Caught in the tide of their enthusiasm, John allowed himself to smile. Maybe this was the first step towards mending the frayed threads that had held them apart. Maybe tonight wasn't just about the food, it was about finding a way back to each other. Suddenly, there was a gentle knock at the door, pulling everyone's attention. Ruth exchanged puzzled glances with John. Who could it be? John stood, curiosity overriding the lightness of their earlier discussion. He opened the door to reveal an unfamiliar face holding a bouquet of flowers. "Excuse me," the stranger said, slightly breathless, "I have a delivery." "Delivery? For whom?" John asked, puzzled. "For Ruth," the delivery person replied, handing over the blooms. "Me?" Ruth asked, clearly surprised. Her brow furrowed in confusion as she stepped forward with hesitation. As Ruth accepted the flowers, the scent was intoxicating, sweet and bright. Then John noticed a glimmer on the package, a card tucked neatly inside. Ruth pulled it out, unfolding it with trembling fingers. "What's it say?" David asked, his voice a mix of anticipation and worry. Ruth read aloud, her voice shaky. "To my amazing daughter, thank you for all your love and support. I'm so grateful to have you in my life." She paused when she saw the signature. "It's from Mom." Gasps filled the room. Ruth's mother hadn't come to the dinner. There had been tension over the past few months, a dispute left unresolved. John felt a pang of concern mixed with excitement, a reconciliation that could be on the horizon. "Is she okay?" Lisa asked, worry spreading across her features. "Should we call her?" "Let me just," Ruth murmured, clutching the flowers to her chest before glancing up at John, her eyes bright. "Look," she's reaching out. "Maybe this is my chance too." For the first time in a long while, hope lit up the room. The possibility of bridging old gaps echoed through the AIR.as. Ruth picked up her phone, the anxious quiet wrapped around them again. Would this restart conversations long left unsaid? John held back his breath, waiting for the sound of her mother's voice on the other end. Would they find themselves reunited in love after all this time? And just as it felt like their family was about to shift with renewed energy, the old phone rang, casting a silence that felt heavier than before. Would the words finally bring everything back together? Or would they be exposed as merely whispers in the wind? Ruth's fingers trembled over her phone, hovering above the screen. The ringing pulled everyone's focus, a mundane sound suddenly feeling monumental. John's heart pounded in rhythm with the notes, the tightness surging back in his throat. Would this be the moment they'd all been waiting for? Or would it send them spiraling back into a silence heavier than before? "Mom." "It's me," Ruth finally breathed when she answered. "Yes, dear," the voice on the other end sounded familiar yet distant. John's brow furrowed as he strained to hear. "Did you send the flowers?" Ruth asked, excitement flaring in her chest but quickly laced with apprehension. "I did," her mother replied softly, a sigh escaping over the line. "What is going on?" "I haven't heard from you in weeks." Ruth leaned back against the wall, her body tense, reminiscent of when she faced tough conversations as a child. A long pause followed, punctuated only by the muffled sounds of their surroundings, a cough from John, a quiet shuffle as Lisa exchanged glances with David. "I know," her mother said finally. "I've been thinking about us a lot. I wish I could say things were easy. And I'm sorry, I just want to talk. I need to understand." Ruth's voice shook. The eagerness to reconnect was battling with the pain of past arguments, unsaid apologies lingering like ghosts in the room. As Ruth's eyes filled with tears, John could see hope and fear warring within her, a reflection of his own emotions. He stepped closer, wanting to be near, to offer strength, but felt as if he could only stand back and let her face this moment. "Can we meet? Please?" Ruth's voice cracked. The question hung in the air, charged with bravery and vulnerability. There was another silence on the line, the kind that can stretch endlessly. "Okay," her mother said at last, the acceptance tinged with reluctance but also warmth. "Let us meet tomorrow. I'll make us lunch. Just like old times." The words felt surreal, the crackle of hope glowing brighter. Ruth nodded, knowing deep down she needed this reconnection. "Yes, I'd like that," she whispered, closing her eyes in a moment of shared longing with the phone still pressed to her ear. Ruth hung up, her breath hitched, and life flooded back into the room. She said yes. We're having lunch tomorrow. She blinked, hope dancing on her features mixed with disbelief. David and Lisa erupted into cheers, squeezing Ruth in a group hug. John felt warmth swell in his heart, reflecting the joy of this breakthrough. They were moments away from healing, and he desperately wanted to tell her how proud he was. Ruth, that's amazing. I mean, it's a start. He exclaimed, his voice tight with emotion. Yeah, it's just the start, she admitted, glancing down at the flowers, the colors vibrant against her pale dress. But I feel like I don't know, maybe we can really work through this. Of course we can. Lisa chimed in, bouncing with energy. You've got us, too. We're all in this together. A shared laughter rippled around the room, blurring the lines between tension and relief until they became one. John couldn't help but think how things might change if they learned to lean on one another more profoundly. Each hug, each shared story around the table, they were small steps towards building a new foundation. As the emotions settled, John felt a sudden pull in his gut. Would it really be that easy to mend old wounds? The excitement in the air felt fragile, each anticipation hanging like the petals of Ruth's flowers, ready to fall. He glanced at Ruth, who still looked teary-eyed but hopeful, and then to David and Lisa, who wore smiles that reached their eyes. Little did they know that the next day would open a door to unexpected revelations, testing the trust they sought to restore. What secrets would the lunch reveal? Would some things be better left unsaid? With hearts filled with hope, they prepared to find out. The next day broke bright and clear, the sun spilling gold over the neighborhood like melted butter. Ruth could hardly contain herself. Each tick of the clock seemed to echo in her mind, a countdown to a moment she both craved and feared. Are you ready? Lisa asked, her cheerful voice breaking through Ruth's swirling thoughts. They were in the kitchen, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee danced in the air, mixed with the scent of toast. Ruth glanced around, her heart racing. I think so. I feel. I don't know, excited. The word felt inadequate, like trying to capture a vast ocean in a teacup. That's good, but also nerve-wracking, right? David chimed in, leaning against the counter with an encouraging grin that felt like a warm hug. You've got this. Yeah, Ruth breathed out slowly. I just hope it goes well. That we can really talk. John stood quietly by the door, watching as the three of them prepared. He admired Ruth's strength and vulnerability, both radiating from her like light through stained glass. He couldn't help but feel a pang of longing for her to find peace with her mother, to fill those voids that had echoed for years. As the hour neared, Ruth checked her reflection one last time. There was determination in her eyes, mingled with a hint of fear. She wasn't just going to face her mother, she was stepping onto a rickety bridge, hoping it wouldn't collapse beneath her. Let us go, she finally declared, and they piled into the car, the mood upbeat, yet tension crackling beneath their laughter. When they pulled up to her mother's house, Ruth could see the picnic table set in the backyard, a colorful spread of sandwiches, salads, and was that her mother's famous potato salad? For a moment, memories flooded back. Lazy summer afternoons eating lunch under the shade, laughter ringing through the air like music. Okay, this is it, John said softly, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder as they climbed out of the car. I'll be right here. You've got this. Taking a deep breath, Ruth made her way up the steps and knocked on the door. Her mother opened it, eyes widening with surprise and joy. Ruth! It's so good to see you. Her voice, tinged with affection, struck a chord deep within Ruth. Hey, Mom, Ruth said, her voice a whisper of what she felt, the old walls of disappointment still standing tall between them. Come in, come in. There was a genuine warmth in her mother's smile, it felt like spring after a long winter. They settled at the table outside, the sun warming their backs, but the shadows of their past lingered. The conversation started with small talk, the easy flow of updates about David and Lisa making their way into the discussion. Ruth's heart raced with the excitement of familiar laughter, even as uncertainty loomed. As the meal progressed, Ruth could sense the moment approaching when they would need to dive deeper. The laughter faded a bit, and her mother looked at her with an expectant gaze. "Ruth," her mother began, her voice trembling just slightly. "About everything that has happened, I know I've made mistakes. I've been terrible at communicating, and I am sorry." Those words hung between them like the sweetest note. Ruth felt tears prick her eyes. "Mom, I just need to know why. Why it felt like we grew apart." The air thickened with unspoken revelations. Her mother reached for her hand, both hesitant and hopeful. "I thought distancing myself would make it easier for you to grow up. I was wrong. I was so wrong." At that moment, Ruth felt a shift, as if the bridge had gained a sturdy pillar, solid against the weight of the past. But was it enough? Ruth's heart raced as she pressed forward. "Can we talk about those decisions? Can we heal?" For a heartbeat, silence reigned, then the sound of a soft sob escaped her mother. "I want that more than anything." In that moment, vulnerability led the way, and Ruth understood that healing wouldn't happen overnight. Yet, it was an opening, a crack of light in a long darkness. But as they began to navigate their way through the tangled stories of hurt and love, a knock at the door interrupted them. Ruth's head snapped towards the sound. Who could that be? An unexpected visitor? A twist that might change everything? She felt a flutter in her chest as uncertainty loomed again. What more was waiting on the other side? The knock echoed again, sharper this time, shaking the fragile atmosphere that had just begun to mend. Ruth exchanged a glance with her mother, both of them still holding on to the remnants of their shared moment. The vulnerability flickered in her mother's eyes, mixed with uncertainty. "Should I get it?" Ruth asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Part of her wanted to run and hide, to protect this newfound connection. But another part, braver and more hopeful, urged her to open the door and embrace whatever was waiting. "Yeah, let us see who it is," her mother replied, squeezing Ruth's hand as if to express her solidarity. Taking a deep breath, Ruth stood and walked to the door, the wooden frame now feeling heavier than before. She turned the handle and pulled it open, bracing herself. Standing on the porch was a woman Ruth barely recognized. Tall, with sleek dark hair pulled back, her eyes wide as she took in the scene before her. "Ruth!" the woman exclaimed, her voice striking a melody of surprise and excitement. "It's been forever." Ruth blinked, processing the name that popped into her mind. "Hannah. Is that really you?" It was her childhood friend, the one who had moved away during their sophomore year of high school. Memories rushed back, sleepovers, inside jokes, and shared secrets that felt ancient. "Yes. I can't believe it." Hannah stepped forward, reaching to pull Ruth into a hug that felt like an electric shock of nostalgia. "I heard you were back in town. I had to stop by." Behind Hannah, two children squirmed, eager to break free of her grasp. "Oh, these are my twins, Ethan and Emma," Hannah beamed, looking back at them. They waved shyly, their faces beaming with youthful energy. Ruth stepped back, her heart racing with a mix of emotions. "Wow, it's so good to see you. Just, wow." Ruth's in the middle of something, but please come in." Her mother chimed in from the table, her smile brightening the atmosphere. As Hannah and her children settled at the picnic table, Ruth was struck by the timing of the visit. Just when she was ready to face the deeper issues with her mother, here was an unexpected twist. Excitement built in the air, but so did apprehension. "So, how are you? What has been going on in your life?" Hannah asked, animated and cheerful. The casualness of her tone danced against the tension that hovered inside Ruth. They spread their stories like sunbeams, illuminating the past with laughter about school days, relationships, and the wild journey of adulthood. Ruth could feel her mother watching. The shared joy of Ruth's childhood friend was infectious. Yet amidst the laughter, her mother's gaze shifted subtly, a flicker of apprehension creeping back in. As Hannah caught up, Ruth's mind swirled back to the conversation she'd begun with her mother. The thread of the past felt nearly within her grasp again, but as easily as it reappeared, it seemed to slip away. Suddenly, the twins began to bicker over a sandwich with more enthusiasm than the moment seemed to hold. "Who wants to join us for a game?" Hannah asked, her eyes glistening with invitation. Ruth felt her heart tugging. It was a chance to ease into the afternoon, a fun distraction to avoid the inevitable deeper conversations flickering in the air. But was it a good distraction or a postponement? A wave of doubt rolled through her. "Hannah, can we catch up, but maybe in a little while?" Hannah nodded, sensing the atmosphere shift slightly. "Of course. Just wanted to see your amazing self," she said, playful yet understanding. As she watched her old friend settle back into the chat, Ruth was torn. It was a paradox of joy and tension, of moving forward while standing at the crossroads of an unfinished conversation. As laughter carried on, Ruth knew time was ticking. She was on the cusp of breaking down walls with her mother, yet the universe had other plans. What truths could she uncover as both the past and present collided? And would she find the strength to navigate it all? The clock kept ticking, it was time to decide. How would she break through that barrier now? Ruth leaned against the doorframe, her heart racing. The laughter from the picnic table filled the air, but she felt tethered to a place of uncertainty. Hannah's stories floated around her, but each giggle and tale felt like another layer wrapped around her, pulling her away from the conversation she needed to have with her mother. Hannah was animated, her hands dancing as she shared stories from the twins' school, their shenanigans as she called them. Emma, a mini version of her mother with dark, curious eyes, chimed in, mimicking a story about a runaway hamster. Ethan was a bundle of energy, bouncing in his seat, his laugh infectious. "I still can't believe you're back," Hannah exclaimed, her enthusiasm overriding Ruth's doubts. "We have so much catching up to do." Ruth forced a smile, feeling a heaviness wrap around her heart. "Yeah, it's been a ride." Her mother's eyes flickered with concern as she sensed Ruth's internal struggle. The light atmosphere was like sunshine trying to peek through dark clouds. "Hey, let's take the kids outside," her mother suggested suddenly, breaking the tension. "How about a game of tag?" The twins squealed, instantly jumping from their seats, their excitement contagious. Ruth felt torn, she wanted to join the fun, to lose herself in the laughter, but a part of her felt weighed down by unresolved feelings. "Go ahead," Ruth said, forcing herself to sound upbeat. "I'll clean up here." "No way," Hannah interjected. "We can help. You made lunch, so it's only fair we pitch in." Before she could argue, the twins had grabbed the last of their sandwiches and were racing outside, pulling their mother along with them. Ruth chuckled, her heart warming just a bit seeing their joy in the quiet aftermath. She watched the scene unfold through the window. Hannah's laughter rang out in the backyard, a bright sunshine against the cloudy thoughts swirling inside her. But as the laughter faded into rustles of leaves and distant calls, the silence of the kitchen pressed back against her. "Ruth," her mother's voice was soft but firm, pulling Ruth back into the moment. "We need to talk." Ruth felt a roll of anxiety twist in her stomach. "About what?" "About us, about everything." Her mother reached out, her eyes shimmering with something akin to fear. Ruth's heart thudded hard against her chest. She could feel that wall they had built over the years, the one they were so close to breaking down. Being back in this space, she could sense its cracks. "I don't know if I can do this," Ruth admitted, biting her lip. "You can," her mother said, her voice trembled with urgency. "Please. I want us to be real again." Ruth felt her breath hitch. Every moment she danced around this was simply prolonging the inevitable. But what if she opened that door and it led to more pain? It felt like a leap into darkness. Suddenly, the cheerful noise from outside blossomed back into the room. Ruth's eyes darted to the window. Hannah and the twins were running wild, a whirlwind of laughter and carefree joy. The contrast was jarring. "Can I take a step back?" Ruth asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just for a little while?" "Of course," her mother said, a flicker of disappointment crossing her features. Yet, she nodded with understanding. Ruth turned her gaze outside, watching the kids tumble and play. But in that moment, she felt the stirrings of determination rise within her. Perhaps by not rushing into it, she could build the courage to face what was holding them back. As she caught Hannah's eye through the window, her friend's smile radiated warmth. Ruth's heart whispered maybe this moment of joy could bridge her into the deeper conversations that waited. "What if we talked after the kids' playtime?" Ruth ventured, her thoughts steadier now. "I'll be ready." Her mother exhaled, a moment of relief evident in her shoulders. It was a small compromise, but it felt like a step in a new direction. As laughter filled the air once more, Ruth knew that the time was coming. The walls were starting to crumble, and soon, the truths they'd been avoiding would echo in the open air. But as the threshold of vulnerability loomed, she felt a chill. What would happen when they reached that point? What truths lay hidden beneath layers of silence? Ruth stood motionless by the window, letting the sounds of laughter wash over her like a blanket of warmth. The fun outside began to tug at her heart, pulling her deeper into a sense of belonging she thought was lost. She tried to relax, but the weight of the coming conversation lingered like a shadow. Emma's giggles, bright and unfiltered, broke through her thoughts. She watched as the twins chased Hannah, their faces full of joy and mischief. There, in the chaos of the backyard, it was a reminder of life's simplest pleasures. Yet, a small voice in her head whispered doubts. Were they really happy? What lay beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect scene? As Ruth turned away from the window, she found her mother still standing there, searching her face for any sign of encouragement. Her mother's smile felt fragile, as if one wrong word could break the moment. Ruth took a deep breath, trying to channel the lightness of the children outside, but it felt impossible when faced with the gravity of their unspoken past. "Can I grab us some drinks while we wait?" Ruth suggested, trying to fill the silence with something else. She hoped to distract herself, but her mother only nodded, her expression solemn. Ruth moved to the fridge, clumsily pulling out lemonade and iced tea. The cool glass felt refreshing against her palms, but her mind was still racing. In preparing the drinks, she caught snippets of the kids' laughter. It twisted her heart, 1 part melancholy, 2 parts yearning for a simpler time. As she poured the drinks into cups, she felt the heat of her mother's gaze. "Ruth, it's okay to be scared," her mother admitted gently. "What if opening up only leads to more hurt?" Ruth heard her own voice tremble, betraying the facade she tried to maintain. Would it just uncover scars that could never fully heal? Her mother stepped closer, her eyes full of understanding. "You won't know until you try. We've both been holding back for too long." They shared a quiet moment, the sudden intimacy tumbling over the years of bottled-up emotions. Ruth swallowed hard, her heart pounding. The stakes felt higher now, as if the space between them had shrunk. "Maybe it's time to talk about how we got here," Ruth said, testing the waters. She was scared but also curious. Just then, the kitchen door swung open, and the twins stormed in, a whirlwind of energy. "Can we have lemonade? Please?" Ethan's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, pulling Ruth back into the joy of the moment. Ruth laughed, recognizing the familiar distractions of motherhood. "Sure, but let us keep it to 1 cup for now." As she filled the cups, the room felt lighter, each small sound of glass tinkling offering a reprieve from the heaviness. She realized that the conversation with her mother didn't have to take place amidst silence and heavy hearts. Laughter could have its place, too, just like those children outside. Once the kids were settled with their drinks, they raced back into the yard, their laughter bubbling up again. Alone with her mother, Ruth felt the tension resettle in the air, but this time, it wasn't as suffocating. She sensed a shift, one that might lead to both of them uncovering their truths. "Are you ready?" her mother asked, her voice now steeped in a curiosity that almost felt inviting. Taking a deep breath, Ruth nodded. "Yes, and no. I think I'm ready to start." Her mother smiled, a shadow of the hope that had flickered for so long now starting to brighten. Ruth could sense the delicate balance of vulnerability and hope settling between them. She wanted to embrace it, but a nagging worry nestled in her mind. What if the truths they spoke led to irreparable damage rather than healing? As the bright sounds of play filled the house, a deep inhale marked the start of something new. Ruth held on to that exhale, the one filled with anticipation of new beginnings, bittersweet but necessary, but as that moment of connection hovered in the air, the subtle tension loomed. What would come tumbling out when the first word broke the stillness? Would they find solid ground, or would they fall into the darkness that had haunted them for so long? The afternoon sun bathed the backyard in warmth, filtering through the leaves like golden confetti, and Ruth took a moment to collect herself before facing her mother. Her heart raced with uncertainty, but there was a new resolve emerging from her anxieties. It was time for them to dive deeper. "Let us take this step together," Ruth said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "No more holding back." Her mother nodded slowly, a flicker of hope sparking in her eyes as they both settled into the quiet of the moment. They could feel the laughter of Hannah and the twins outside, threading through the air and reminding them that joy still existed if only they could find it again. "Ruth, I've been thinking about all our misunderstandings. I wish I could take back certain moments. I pushed you away, I thought. I thought it would protect you," her mother admitted, her voice breaking slightly. Ruth felt a wave of empathy wash over her. "I know you meant well, but when you distanced yourself, it felt like I was losing you. I needed you there." Tears brimmed in her mother's eyes. "I realize now that I was wrong. I thought distance and silence might create space for growth, but all it did was leave us apart. Mom, it was painful feeling like I had to carry everything alone." Ruth's voice was steady, she was allowing the truth to flow. The small moments they had shared were now bursting into vivid memories, kind gestures, hardships, and misunderstandings. The tenderness in the air thickened, but there was strength gathering along with it. The storms they had weathered were a testament to their shared love, even if it had felt frayed at times. "I should have been more present for you," her mother responded, leaning closer, her gaze piercing into Ruth's soul. "I thought my worries would just fade away if I didn't talk about them, but it just quieted our laughter. I always loved you and I want to repair this, our bond." Tears slipped down Ruth's cheeks. "I love you too, but I felt lost, like I didn't know how to reach out anymore. I was afraid to show my fear." Suddenly, Ruth's mother reached over, clasping both of Ruth's hands in hers. "We can try again, step by step. No more barriers. Just honesty." Ruth nodded, her heart swelling with hope. "Yes. Let's build something new." An unease surfaced in her mom's eyes. "You think it can be done? After everything?" "I do," Ruth said firmly, her voice thick with promise. "But we need to share our pains, the doubts, and the fears. We need to talk through it." Just as her mother opened her mouth to speak, there was a series of loud giggles from the backyard. The twins, full of energy, burst through the door, breathless and laughing. "What are you two talking about?" Ethan asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Just some grown-up stuff," Ruth replied with a soft smile, that familiar warmth of family blooming around her. "Can we be a part of it?" Emma asked, pouting playfully, her innocence shining through. "We like grown-up stuff." Ruth chuckled, the tension breaking, and her mother's smile widened. "How about we make it a family affair?" Ruth suggested, casting a glance at her mother, who nodded eagerly. "Let us make a pact to always communicate, no matter what," her mother urged, her eyes brightening. "Even if it means starting with a game of tag?" Ruth teased lightly, remembering the joy of being a child at play. Laughter erupted as Hannah and the twins joined them, drawing the silhouette of connection tighter. That evening, as the stars twinkled above, the family gathered around the picnic table laden with food. The atmosphere was filled with the smell of grilled burgers, laughter, and shared stories, each moment stitching them closer together as a family. There were no more walls, just hearts open and embraced in vulnerability. At the end of the night, John noticed that Ruth looked lighter, like a weight had finally lifted. As they packed things up, he caught her eye and saw gratitude reflected in her smile. She had taken a step toward healing, and he was proud. "Thank you for being part of this," Ruth said to him softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've always had it in you, Ruth. I've seen your strength all along." As they prepared to head home, the warmth of a community surrounded them, reminding John of the ties that bind them all. They would face life together, every small victory a testament to love's power to heal, and with that thought echoing in his heart, John felt a radiant smile take over his face. They were a family once more, ready to take on the world together. Now, if you're feeling inspired by this journey, it's time to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel, so you won't miss the next exclusive stories that warm the heart and ignite your spirit. This is the moment to show your support and really help spread the joy. Leave a like right now to feed the algorithm and let everyone know we're building a community of love and connection. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Sharing the love, the lessons, and the journey is what we're all about. Join us in making a difference today.